Hi, today I'll be presenting my research project called Tennis More Than a Game. I chose this topic because tennis has been a huge part of my life for years. I've played competitively, I've coached, and spent countless hours at practices and tournaments. Because I'm around it so much, I realized I never really stopped to pay attention to everything happening outside of actual matches. Um, for this project, I wanted to look at what makes the tennis environment unique and see if there was more going on than just people trying to win. I observed several different tennis settings, compared what I saw with previous research, and I looked for patterns that appeared across each one. Um, the main question I wanted to answer was pretty simple. It was just what makes tennis more than a sport. Most people think about tennis in terms of competition. They picture the score, the winners, and the matches themselves. While all that is definitely a part of it, I wanted to know what else was happening throughout the practices, the lessons, and the tournaments. Like, I wanted to know if there was something behind it. Because even for me, it was never just about winning and competing. I actually didn't like that part at all. It was everything else. And so I was kind of trying to see if everyone else matched how I was feeling. I was really just wondering how people interacted with each other, how coaches influenced players, and whether the environment changed depending on the age or skill level of the players. To answer those questions, I observed three completely different tennis settings and compared what I noticed with the information from previous research. Um, Before doing my observations, I read four research articles that each looked at tennis from a different perspective. One focused on the physical side of tennis and explained how demanding the sport really is. It talked about endurance, movement, and how preparation goes into playing well. Another article discussed the health benefits of tennis and showed that regular participation can improve both physical and mental health. Um, I also read about the motor learning, which explained how players improve through the repetition, the coaching, and experience over time. The final article was completely different from the rest of them, and it focused on communication, kind of comparing tennis to a communication style, and showed that even though tennis is often considered an individual sport, people are constantly interacting with coaches, teammates, opponents, and officials. Like, you can't go into a tennis match and not talk at all. Reading these articles gave me a better idea of what to watch for when I was making my own observations for sure. Um, Next, I'm going to talk about my research methods. To collect my information, I observed three different tennis environments, as I've been saying. The first was at a middle school tennis camp where beginners were learning the basics of the game. And then the second was at an adult tennis lesson with players who had different skill levels and different reasons for playing. I was an active participant in that one. And then the third was at a state co-ed tournament. I was watching that where players were competing at a much higher level. Like, this was top of the state people. During each observation, I paid attention to things like communication, body language, the coaching styles, confidence levels, encouragement, routines, sportsmanship, and how people just reacted during different situations. I kind of was trying to keep my eye out for everything. I didn't want to narrow my mind down to anything. Like, I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to focus on this. Like, no, I wanted to be very open minded so I could see everything that there had to offer. I also compared everything I observed with the research articles that I had already seen and read to see if similar patterns appeared. So this one was I coached the middle school camp. I coached and I talked to all the opponents. So I was I was honestly more of an observer. Like, I wasn't playing the tennis. This was a non-participant observation. I was kind of a participant. I don't know. The adult lesson, though, I was a full participant. Like, I was a part of the adult lesson. And then the state tournament, I was full non-participant observation. Um, After finishing all these 3 observations, I did notice several patterns that showed up again and again over and over. The first that stood out to me was how supportive the tennis environment was. Like, no matter where I was, coaches were constantly encouraging players instead of only pointing out mistakes. They celebrated the improvements, they celebrated the positive mindsets, they gave positive feedback, and helped players just really stay confident even when they struggled. Players also encouraged each other much more than I expected. Like, you would be so shocked by how many people were like, if they get ace, they're just like, oh, good serve, or they're like, good shot. They complimented all of these good shots, and they congratulated opponents after matches, and even helped less experienced players during practices. Another thing I noticed was how communication happened in each session. There were constant conversations between players and coaches, teammates, parents, and even the opponents would talk to each other. Even when I played, I talked a lot with my opponent. I didn't like silence when I was playing. People weren't only just talking about tennis strategy, though. They were joking with each other, they were asking questions, they were giving advice and building relationships throughout each day. I also noticed that every environment had routines that everyone seemed to naturally follow. Players knew when to rotate courts, collect balls, shake hands, thank their opponents, and respect the coaches without needing constant reminders. These routines created an organized environment that helped everything run smoothly, and I just wasn't really expecting that out of a sport because I've played like all of the sports, and tennis is the most organized I've seen so far. Some more findings I had was kind of how all 3 of the environments were similar. Like, that really surprised me. Even though I observed beginners, recreational adults, and competitive tennis players like that play at state tournaments, many of the same behaviors appeared in every single group. Like, the confidence seemed to grow when people received encouragement from coaches or teammates or the audience. Preparation almost always made a huge difference. Players who practiced consistently looked much more comfortable during matches. They recovered from their mistakes more quickly and stayed focused even after losing points. You could tell who was hydrated and who worked out. Like, you could tell who's prepared for these matches and playing and who wasn't. Sportsmanship, though, was another major theme. Almost every match ended with players shaking hands, thanking each other, and showing respect regardless of who won. Even after a few lucky shots or close calls, players usually apologized or acknowledged what happened instead of celebrating someone else's mistake. Like, when the ball will just like hit the top of the net and then trickle over. That's one of the biggest ones that people apologize during. One of my biggest takeaways, though, from this project was realizing that tennis is built just as much on relationships and respect as it is on competition. Winning matters, but the overall environment is shaped by how people treat each other. You're not going to enjoy the sport if you're constantly being treated poorly or treating others poorly. It's just not how that works. Another thing I did find interesting was how closely my observations connected to the research articles. Many of the ideas I had or read beforehand, like the communication, the preparation, the confidence, and just the benefits and like learning through experience, were easy to recognize once I started paying closer attention. My next slide is about my limitations in future research. Like every project, there were a few limitations. Like, I really only observed 3 tennis settings, so I obviously couldn't represent every tennis program or every player. I didn't hit the super duper old people either. Like, the oldest I was probably playing with was like 50. Since I've spent so much time around tennis myself, I also had previous knowledge that may have influenced what stood out to me or not. Like, I kind of knew what to look out for, whereas like if I came in with no prior experience, I could have had a completely different observation. And I did have like a small sample size. I was talking about, like, it's not like I was doing the super statistical, getting equal pulls from everyone. Like, no, mine was pretty random, a little bit convenience. Like, it was kind of just what was happening around us right now. And then if I continued this project, I think it would be interesting to compare tennis with other sports to see if the same patterns appear or if tennis has a unique culture compared to team sports. I'd also like to interview players and coaches to hear about their own experiences instead of relying only on observations. I think I would just like to do more research methods. I would like to compare it to other sports. That would be really unique and interesting for me to look at. But overall, this project completely changed how I look at tennis as a whole. Before, I mostly paid attention to the matches themselves. Now I kind of notice everything happening around them. Like, I notice the conversations between coaches and players, the encouragement after mistakes, the routines everyone follows, and the relationships that develop throughout the practices and tournaments. Like, my biggest takeaway is in the title, like, tennis is really more than just a game. It's a place where people build confidence, learn from each other, create friendships, and develop habits that go so much further beyond simply hitting a ball. Working on this project made me appreciate those parts of the sport much more than I did before, and now they're some of the first things I notice when I'm on a court. But to kind of wrap it up, these are the articles I used throughout my project, along with the observations I completed at the middle school tennis camp, the adult lesson, and the state tournament. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Oh,